Welcome back, everyone. We are going to be going to the Duelist number 8 today to look at some of the letters because people have been complaining about Magic the Gathering for well over 20 years, whether it's been by writing letters to Wizard or if it was on the old CompuServe or AOL message boards or in the Usenets groups. Things have not changed in 25 years. But why I'm going to start here in the Duelist number 8 is because I think MTG Purple actually wrote into the magazine in this one. So it's very fascinating. It's also one of the first times we've seen people complaining about the artwork too. You know, it's been going on for so long. It's more than just pirates. Okay. So here we go. We got the Duelist number 8, December of 1995. And the first thing I want to read, I'm going to put on my voice of what I think MTG Purple must have sounded like as a kid. And we're going to read this because he's recently talked about the old cantrips. This might be where he learned about them from. The what goes? In the Duelist number 6 article, cantrips, something for nothing. Why did the author think cantrips were good? If you wanted to draw more cards, you could use Brain Geyser or Howling Mine. And I use Icy Manipulator to tap Howling Mine on my opponent's turn. First of all, you have to pay more mana just to get your deck to disappear. I played with a friend, and all he had were millstones and a Brain Geyser. I was murdered by 5 millstones. One of them was a copy artifact. To make matters worse, I had a few cantrips in my deck, Invenerate, and had my library milled away. I lost to 4 creature deck because of the cantrips and millstone. AAH Fro, the purple knight that goes neep neep. So, the author of that article from the Duelist number 6, Chris Page, ended up responding. And at this time, the cantrips were more like the whole slow trips, as MTG Purple had said. But the author's response was, there are a lot of points to address in this letter. First, for the specifics. If you just want to draw cards, Brain Geyser is better, but the existence of a degenerate card doesn't invalidate all the others. Actually, if you want to go further, Brain Geyser itself is pretty useless when compared to Ancestral Recall. As for the Howling Mine Icy Manipulator combination, it's not bad, but it is a combination which you need to get in your hand first. And half the combination, Howling Mine, is weak by itself since it nets your opponent 2 cards. But as I mentioned, the point of cantrips is not just to draw cards, it is to get a useful effect and draw more cards. Citing one game as a reason why a set of cards is bad is an easy mistake to fall into. There will be games where your opponent will draw all 4 millstones in the top 12 cards. There will also be games where your opponent will draw only 1 land in the top 12 cards. The things to remember is that the average game is very different from individual games. Just like rolling 4 dice, an average will get you 14, but there will be times when you'll roll a 4 or a 23. There's also the fact that no deck will beat every deck. Each deck has its vulnerabilities. You should remember this, all you net deckers out there. You know, there's always a weakness. So, a red direct damage deck is going to die horribly against a deck with Circle of Protection red and 3 conversions. And a deck that tries to speed through all 60 cards suffers a weakness when it goes against the Millstone deck. Against the Millstone deck, you either need to break down your opponent's artifacts with Scabs Your Folk, Disenchant, or Shatterstorm, or deal 20 damage rapidly with waves of creatures while your opponent's tying up his mana with the Millstones. And if you're worried about running through your cards too fast, there's always the second option of playing with more than 60 cards. In fact, we're currently in the process of trying to design an expansion where there will be decks for which you'll want to include more than 60 cards. Now that's some interesting history right there. So, there's a lot of cards in here that were talked about, and there's a lot of things that have changed over time. I do not think that Icy Manipulator can tap an artifact and stop its effect anymore nowadays. But it's very interesting also here that back 23 years ago, Wizards of the Coast is looking at decks where you can play with more than 60 cards. And I don't think it was Commander that they were necessarily looking at that time. So we'll probably research this and delve into it some more later on. But, I'm going to attribute that one to MTG Purple because it was signed by the Purple Knight. So I could be wrong, but, it's fun to blame him for this one. Now, the next one is very interesting. And actually, it's going to be in reference to the Duelist, number 6 here, and the artwork here that's on the cover. So keep in mind this mermaid by Rob Alexander that's on the cover as we read this next letter. Offensive art in the Duelist? I am a concerned parent of a 10-year-old boy who is an avid Magic player. He plays often with friends and spends a lot of his hard-earned money on cards and magazines. I am glad to see him involved in an interactive game with friends, which is not computer or video games. Until this time, it has seemed as an imaginative, fun, and involving game for him. It's very hard to be a concerned parent. My concern is Duelist number 6, which has a questionable pull-out poster by artist Rob Alexander. Each side is offensive. One is sexually suggestive. Really? The other uses human skulls crossed over the line from fantasy to violence. I had considered purchasing a Duelist subscription for my son, but I will not at this time. Please consider what you print and the possible effects it will have on all people, young and mature. I hope you believe you have some social responsibility to your players and readers. You have a lot of power over your consumers. Use it wisely. Thanks for considering the input for your future issues. Oh my. So, this stuff's been going on for quite a while with, controversial art or things like this. And this is, during the time when there was also pentagrams on the artwork for a lot of the black cards, like Unholy Strength and Demonic Tutor, and you had Pentagram of the Ages and all. But, it's really interesting that this cover is so controversial. Really? I can name a few other things that are probably a little bit more controversial than that at the time. But again, we're looking at December of 1995 here. And Rob Alexander did respond to this letter. So, in your letter, you encourage the Duelist to pay particular attention to the content of the magazine, as it is a powerful tool which is placed in the hands of a large number of readers, many of them children. Really? Remember this, folks. A lot of children play Magic. So, allow me to assure you then that the Duelist has always recognized the fact and acted responsibly towards it. In fact, each artist who has worked with the Duelist is given a set of artist guidelines, which clearly indicate the presence of the younger reader and the need therefore to keep the subject matter of all imagery appropriate for all audiences. The cover and interior poster, rather than being exempt from those guidelines, are, if any, scrutinized more closely and carefully. It pains me, therefore, to hear of your concern and reaction to my paintings. Poseidon's Daughter, the image on the cover, is not sexually suggestive, despite the figure's lack of clothing. Mermaids are often represented as seductive temptresses, but as you can see in her expression and posture, this particular mermaid is in mourning. In her hand, she holds a daisy chain, possibly a last reminder or connection to the young girl buried in the sand beneath her. True, the mermaid wears no clothing, but she is a mermaid. if we are to accept that this is a fantasy image and that mermaids exist, if only in the minds of artists, then she should be in her natural state, not wanting to create a sexual image. I place a mermaid on her stomach. There is an indication of female anatomy, but it goes no further than an indication. I am very sorry you see the mermaid as sexual. All I want to... I can't read today, apparently. As I went to considerable lengths to ensure that it was not a sexual painting at all. As per the interior poster, there is an image which stems from what I would call a personal mythology rather than a collective one. As far as I know, there is no historical basis for this exact character. There is, however, precedent for carving symbols on bones and skulls, which is precisely what the character in the painting is doing. He is not a violent character, as you suggest, but rather a meditative one. He collects, catalogs, and renders final service to those he finds who have passed on unnoticed and unmarked. In other words, he is nature's caretaker of souls. He bears no weapons, as he does not kill. The skulls and bones he has collected are those from who have already died, as is indicated by the ropes with which the skulls are slung over the tree branches. Nor are his services limited to humans, as is evidenced in the numerous animal skulls for which he is also carrying. I trust you give this new insight into the imagery and alleviates your concern about the conduct of the artists, directors, and editors of The Duelist. Be sure that they are, and all artists who work with Wizards of the Coast, are aware of who our work is exposed to and of the powerful influence it can have. So, art has been something that has been, complained about for quite some time. And I know recently there's been big controversy with Rivals of Ixalan and everything there with all the female pirates and everything else like this. And it's not the first time that this has all happened. Like I said, here we go. We're going back over 22 years and parents were writing in and there was concerns. The game was banned in schools or other establishments at the time because of some of the artwork or imagery. So there was always, it's always been a controversial thing that's happened. I do recall a time I was playing in a coffee shop in a little town with some friends, and one of them was playing a black deck, and I think I was playing like a blue deck or something like that. And while we were playing and enjoying our coffee, there was nobody else in there. The police got called. Yeah. So we had a police officer come in and they escorted us out and said that we were making people feel uncomfortable. Okay. So I don't recall the last time police had to get called on a card game, but oh boy. So that's some of that's how things have kind of changed since back in the day. You don't see that happening. The artwork has become a little less controversial. Kind of miss some of that because, some of the errors like the Ukatabi orangutan, even back in the day, was just a hilarious card. So, I miss things like that. And some of the artwork on the cards seems to have lost its soul because a lot of it all looks very digitized and it all looks very samey. So, there's been a few sets where there's been a little bit of excitement and pop and colorfulness and different dynamics. But for the most part, it's not the same art that it used to be. But, the big thing about this is really, the complaints about Magic has been around for quite some time. Wizards has been dealing with this for years. And there was just a taste of some of it from 23 years ago. If you want to hear some more letters and some of the responses from Wizards of the Coast staff, do let us know, and we'll see if we want to continue this. See you next time. So, because of that, you get the risers, and you get the shells. The shells are usually about $6 each, but they are such an efficient way to hold these big boxes. It even holds them with the lids on, okay?